This is Expat Experts.
Welcome to this special episode of Expat Experts. Today we are back a little bit like the COVID quarantine times, and we are recording online again. I'm really happy to have here with me Cepee. I will need to get used to the name connection a little bit, to the name, not saying it too wrong. You've lived in Spain, you're living currently in Spain right now, and you're originally from Texas, USA. Cepee has like a crazy interesting project that we will talk in the second part of the episode, but a little bit like right now what you are doing, it's creating like content and helping women who is over 30 years old to move to other countries. You actually have a blog, you have websites, you have social media, you have even like a podcast on your own, you have videos in YouTube, you have quite a lot of content, and definitely like we can talk about it later, and you can explain a little bit why and how, and you're creating all of this. You've been actually mentioned by Forbes and New York Times, which is okay, kudos, like not bad, like for having that's, I suppose it's not easy to achieve. But yeah, just before going a little bit more into your life and to the real episode part, I just, as always, remind everyone to follow us in social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikToks, and all of this, but especially in Spotify and YouTube, and also Podimo, which is the platform for podcasters. So you can stay tuned about the new episodes coming in and the whole podcast in general. With that said, let's go for it.
The Expat, Episode 5 with Cepee Tabibian.
So yeah, thank you so much for accepting, first of all, like to be interviewed today and to talk about your experience. As I said, you are from Texas, correct?
Yes. Thank you, Mark. First, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to be here on Expat Experts. So yes, I am originally from Houston, Texas.
Nice. And you've been living abroad for quite some time, actually, no? Now, like it has been some years.
Yeah, I've been on and off abroad for the last, I would say, 20 some years. But this most recent time, I've been living in Spain for about 9 years now.
Okay. So it wasn't the first time that you were living abroad when you moved to Spain?
No. Well, I tried moving to Spain many times and it always failed. So I had moved here in 2006, again in 2009, and then again in 2015. So there were many times that I came and I tried, stuck around for maybe a year or so, and then had to move back to the US. But in 2015, I thought, let me try one more time. And it worked. So I'm still here almost 9 years later.
Okay. So why this like more failed? It was more job related or visa related, or what was going on in there? Like,
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, when I first fell in love with Spain, that was a very long time ago. That was the first time I came here was 2001, but I was still studying. So I wasn't really in a place where I could move abroad. But when I moved here in 2006, I came on a program to teach English that's really popular in Spain for native English speakers. It's called the North American Language and Culture Assistant Program. So I came here, did that for a year, teaching English in a high school. But I didn't want to teach long term. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And unfortunately, at the time, teaching really was one of the very few ways that Americans, US citizens could really live in Spain or in many countries around the world. So that was the biggest challenge. All those times I tried and failed. So after I taught English for a year, tried to stayed a little bit without a visa. So I won't go into that too much, but I stayed here for another year like that. Went back to the US and just after a few years had that feeling like I really want to come back to Spain. So I came back and I did a master's degree in Madrid for a year. But when that program was over, I had to move back to Texas for personal reasons. And then finally, in 2015, like I said, it worked out, and it did work out. I came to teach English, but I was able to figure out that obstacle of what am I going to do that isn't English. And so I, went on a journey from there. And since then, I've been able to figure that out.
When I can get rid of trying to make Spanish speak a language that they are not very good at, I will not criticize more, because then I will not be able to go back home. But our level of English, it's not the best in the world, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. But it helps you learn Spanish, right? Because you have to learn Spanish to survive here.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. It does very much force you if you go to Spain. But when the Spanish people go outside of Spain and you see sometimes the level of English, it's concerning. Sometimes I can compare it to here to Greece, for example, where the Greeks have a pretty decent level, surprisingly.
Yeah, they do.
They actually have everything translate. They don't translate that much in the TV, and everything it's original language and everything, so that helps them a lot. But yeah. So you said you came for a master also. What are your background studies like? What did you study back then?
Yeah, so my undergraduate, what I studied in the US was marketing. So I got a degree in marketing. And I worked in sales marketing for a bit in my 20s, but there was a point where I wanted to really change my whole focus and move away from business and work more in international relations. And so I came to Madrid and I studied a master's in international relations at IE University. And the idea was to do that program and then find work abroad. And really at that point, I would have loved to have stayed in Spain, but I also was looking at the Middle East. My father's from Iran and I had spent some time in Palestine. So I really was driven to work in development in the Middle East. So really shift focus there. Now I don't work in that so much. My life took me somewhere else, but at the time, that's what I had planned.
So cool. I heard in one of the episodes that you have from the podcast that you have a pretty international family. So you just said that your dad is Iranian, but your mom is also not from the US. It's Colombian, as far as I remember. Or...
Yeah, you're right. Yes, immigrant family. Both of my parents, yes, are immigrants, as many people in the US, right, have immigrant parents.
Did that influence anyhow, the fact that you wanted to move somewhere? Because if your parents did it, maybe that's a step on your decision also to try it out.
Right? It's such a logical way to see it. But you know what? It actually wasn't. It's so strange. Growing up, I grew up in a very multicultural household. But I think, when you're little, you don't want to be different. You want to be like everybody else. And I really wanted to be like my, American friends that had, their families were there for generations. And I didn't like my name. I wanted my name to be Sarah and, all those things that I really kind of rejected, all the things that made me different. And so I didn't have a desire to go abroad, not until high school. And what really got me curious about even exploring the rest of the world was meeting some of the exchange students or students whose parents got relocated to Houston for work that were from other countries, and just becoming very close friends with them and learning about their countries and their cultures and their languages. That's what piqued my interest to move abroad.
Cool. But I remember also that you said something about that you start rather going traveling first, and then that also piqued a little bit you in the sense of triggered your curiosity of saying, okay, I'm traveling, but that maybe it's not enough, or how that process happened. Because a lot of people travels and they go back home and only see their countries from a tourist perspective, no? What motivated you to decide, no, I want to live in these countries?
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, I did my first international trip by myself at 17. Well, by myself, I say like I went on the trip alone, but I was going to stay with one of those friends that I had met in Houston that their parents, had got relocated. So I made one of my best friends in high school was a girl from the Netherlands. And she was in Houston for a year, and then her family moved back to the Netherlands. And for my 17th birthday, I begged my parents to send me to the Netherlands to go see her. And surprisingly, they did, which is very unlike my very strict Iranian father. But they let me go halfway across the world by myself to go stay with her and her family. And really, it was that trip that allowed me to see the world. And maybe for some people, the Netherlands isn't so different, but it was different enough for someone who had never left the US. And just that experience of seeing so many new things, experience a different culture. I just almost instantly had that feeling like, I want to live here. And really it started with the Netherlands, right? I was like, oh, I want to live here. This could be so cool. And maybe people who started off as travelers and later moved abroad can remember, that first taste of something different where you think like, oh, I want to live here. And then you try another country and you're like, oh, wait, maybe I want to live here in Germany, or, oh no, maybe it's France. And so I had that for a few years as I traveled. But as I said, at the time, I was very young and I was still studying. So moving abroad wasn't an actual option for me. It was more like the seed was planted, like this would be cool to do one day, but there was no real plan for it.
Cool. Was it always like, you said that you were like also at some point considering like Middle East, but more from studies after the master perspective. But when you were thinking like of the first moves to say, okay, this travel that you did at 17, and at that point of time, of course, like you were under 18, which is not that easy. You are studying, it's complex to move abroad. But when you finally decided to go, was always European countries at that point of time, or because... Or it was really specifically some countries inside of Europe that was more like the idea that you had in mind?
Yeah, I would say at first, I only had experience in Europe. I had gone to Colombia, but I was very young and didn't remember. But really those early, like late teens, early 20s, it was only Europe I had experience. So that was my focus. And it was once I landed, I had gone to the Netherlands, I had Germany, Switzerland. And once I went to Spain one year, that was it. I just went to Madrid to study Spanish for the summer because my Colombian mother never taught me Spanish. So I came to Spain to learn, and it was like love at first sight with Madrid. I just got there and I just felt like this is my place in the world. So really, Spain became the place that I needed to be very, very early on. And here I am like 20 some years later and I'm still here.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if it influenced the fact of like having a Colombian mother in the language, like if you learned Spanish before coming, and that was a decision to go for Spain. There is a lot of South American and Central American people who chooses to come to Spain because of the language. Makes a lot of sense.
Definitely.
So in that case, you learned Spanish while being in Spain already, or?
Yeah. Of course, I grew up around Spanish, my mother speaking it, and, to her family members. And, we studied it in high school, but I was not speaking Spanish. And I actually think if my mom if I would have grown up speaking Spanish, I'm not sure that I would have come to Spain at that point in my life, because the decision to come to Spain was very much linked to doing, language course over the summer. And so maybe if I would have grown up speaking Spanish, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in Spain. Maybe I would have gone to France instead. I don't know, to learn French, and maybe I'd be in France or who knows where. So as much as I'm like disappointed that my mother never taught me Spanish and I had to learn it as an adult, I'm kind of grateful because it led me to where I am.
Nice. Well, who knows where you had been if you would be speaking Spanish from Colombian Spanish.
Yeah, who knows?
What captivated you from Madrid? What was the thing that triggered you, like, because you said, you traveled to other places before, and then when you went to study Spanish there, something did this click in Madrid? What was it?
Yeah. Oof, I think, well, Madrid just has a certain energy and vibrance to it. And I come from a big city, Houston, but it's very much a car city. It's a very, different way of living to when I went to go study in Madrid. I was staying in the city center and I could walk everywhere. And there was so much energy and life in the streets at all hours of the day, right? It was summer, so it was hot. People are outside. I got to experience the nightlife as a 21-year-old. Of course, that's incredible to be able to go out and be out till 6, 7 in the morning and meeting all these international people. So it was just such a liberating experience. Also, as I mentioned, coming from a background where I had a very strict father and there were a lot of rules growing up, a lot of things I couldn't do. Also, that summer in Madrid really was this taste of freedom I had never had. And I will say also those other trips I had done before to, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, I was always going to visit someone and stay with someone, a friend and their family. Spain was the first time I went totally on my own and didn't know anybody where I was going. And so, I think the language helped too, even though I wasn't a Spanish speaker, there was a lot of familiarity with the language. And the culture. Spain is a very warm culture. I would say not as warm as Latin America, but still warmer than some of the countries I had been to. And so I just felt very much at home there. So there was this excitement. There was this feeling of I belong here in a way. And there was also I could really envision my life there too. I just really enjoyed the lifestyle. So it captivated me early on. And I still have that feeling. Well, we can talk about that later as well, but I don't live in Madrid anymore, but every time I go, I was just there 2 weeks ago and I still get this excitement, butterflies in my stomach. And I love that city and love being there.
Nice. That's actually one of the other questions that I was going to ask you, because I know that you're not in Madrid anymore, that you're living right now in Malaga. When this change happened, why? I mean, what made you change inside of the same country to another city?
Right. Yeah. So I had been living in Madrid for 5 years. So this was 2015 to 2020, loving it, having a great life. We all know what happened in 2020. We had pandemic, and Spain had some very, very harsh lockdowns. I think I just needed a change, of being in Madrid during that time and kind of being locked into my shoebox apartment. I just was craving change and space, a bit more maybe nature and freedom. And at the time I had some friends in Madrid who were moving to the coast of Spain. And it just kind of clicked in my head. I never wanted to leave Madrid. I love Madrid. Thought I would, live and die there. So I never thought of leaving Madrid, but just seeing friends moving to the coast and having that feeling of, I need a little bit of a change. I thought, why not go to Malaga temporarily? I'll go for 6 months. I'll go for the winter. And then I'll come back to Madrid in the summer of 2021 when this COVID thing is over and things open up and life is all normal again. So that was my idea. It was just temporary change, never intended to make a life in Malaga and go back. But that didn't happen. 3.5 years later, I'm still in Malaga and I never went back to Madrid.
What kept you in Andalusia?
Yes.
In the
what
sunny
kept
and
me
hot
here?
Andalusia.
So I love Andalusia. Actually, I spent a year in Cordoba in 2006. That's when I taught English. And I love Andalusia, always have. Never envisioned living here, but always love to visit. And you know what? When I moved to Malaga when I said in 2020, moved here temporarily. So I never intended to stay in Malaga, but 2 weeks after moving here is when I met my now partner. So, came here, met somebody, and that's why I have never left. He also wasn't living here at the time. He's from here, but he was living in the US actually, which is pretty funny, and visiting his family during COVID. And we met, and neither of us ever, right? I never went back to Madrid. He never went back to the US, and we decided to stay in Malaga. But I'm always trying to convince him to move to Madrid, or trying to. So we'll see. Maybe one day I'll get my wish and we'll go back. We'll see.
Have you ever been considering like going back to US at some point also? Like, did it ever cross your mind during these years?
I never wanted to, but there was a point early on in my move in 2015, maybe a year or two after being in Spain. As I mentioned, the biggest obstacle was always trying to find work that wasn't teaching English, because that's not what I wanted to do. And I was struggling. I mean, I was able to, very luckily, after that year of teaching, I was able to get a Spanish company to sponsor my work visa, and I was working in marketing. But I really disliked that job. It wasn't a very healthy work environment. So, I had to quit that job, and I found myself in this space of, okay, now I don't have a visa because I quit the job. I don't have a job. I don't want to teach English. If I want to stay in Spain, what can I do to make this work? Because nothing is working at the moment. And that's when I, started thinking, do I need to go back? Is this not going to work out? So that was the only time that I really thought about it, but it was more because I was sort of maybe going to have to be forced to leave. It all worked out, as we know. But other than that, I have never thought of moving back. I don't really see my life in the US. I feel very comfortable in Spain, but also I'm very much open to maybe starting a new adventure and going to a different part of the world. But I think ultimately Spain for me feels like, a home base, or my home now. But I don't think a move back to the US is going to be happening. I hope not.
Did it, like, you said that the job part was probably the most difficult part, like having that you had when you arrived to Spain, and that it was like a little bit like you needed to be forced a little bit to do jobs that you were not happy with, or that you didn't want to be doing at that point of time. I think it's kind of common for English, like, to arrive to a country and be a teacher of your own language there for some time as a part. Was there anything else that you remember being complex, like when you arrived to Spain, like I don't know, integrating into Spanish groups, or like any of that? Was it complicated for you?
Not so much. I mean, I guess it depends maybe where you are in the country, and also where you are in life, right? When I moved, I was in my mid-30s, and Madrid is a very social city with a lot of events and meetups going on. It's very easy to make friends, and there was, a lot of people my age there. And also it's a city where people come from all over Spain, all over Europe. So it's a city where people are seeking friendships, right? Because a lot of people are not from there. And so I found making friends not so difficult, but that's more international friends. I did find it a bit challenging, and maybe still so, is breaking into, Spanish friend circles. But I think that's probably the same anywhere you go in the world, right? I think at a certain age, really, people also have their friendship groups established. If they are locals, they have their family, their friends from, their whole life. They're not really looking to pick up some foreigners here and there to add to the group. And so I think that can make it difficult to make local friends, especially if you're not working, in an office in that country, or going to school. You don't really have a community kind of built into your day-to-day experience. So that's always been a bit of a challenge. It helps having a partner from the country, right? That helps getting into those circles. But I think, other than that, I think the work visa is always the biggest headache, or a visa, and finding the right work.
How is it now, like visa wise for Americans? Like, is it a very complex process, or how it has been the experience for you? Because I know that it's not the easiest bureaucracy in the world, that's for sure. Like,
yeah. It's actually never been easier for a U.S. citizen or anyone, right, to move to Spain, because there's more visa options than when I moved here. In particular, the digital nomad visa. So, And also, remote work wasn't really a thing when I moved here. Sure, there were some remote jobs, but it was very, very few and far between. And now the whole work world has changed. So those two things have made it a lot easier for people to move here. I guess I should mention part of the job challenge in Spain was also the salaries. The salaries here are very low. So when I got a work visa sponsorship and worked for this startup as somebody, in their 30s with experience and a master's education, my pay was, I think, 22,000 euros a year, right? So the average salaries in Spain are very low, which can be a big deterrent for people to want to find work here. So remote work visas, remote work and the digital nomad visa has made it a lot easier for people to be able to move here and maybe come with a higher salary.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the biggest challenges that Spanish people are having right now. We are having right now, especially in the big cities, like where your salaries are still capped to 1,000 something, 1,200 if you are lucky at the end of the month, and then your apartments are like 800 or 1,000 euros per apartment, and you're spending an 80% of your salary in that. So I get it. I mean, and it makes it easier for the people to come. And if you get the salary and you're lucky, you get the salary from somewhere else and you're able to live in these countries, it's easy. But for the people who live there, it is a whole struggle, I think. Yeah.
It's a big struggle. Yeah, they cannot afford to live in their own cities. And, that's always part of the conversation is, are we part of the problem, us foreigners, or maybe Americans who are coming? And there are a lot of Americans, not only Americans, but North Americans, people around the world coming. And I think we are maybe play a part in the problem, but I think the problem is even greater than us, right? There's a lot of housing. Well, there's a shortage of housing happening everywhere, right? But a lot of that is happening because companies are coming in and buying buildings and making those into Airbnb. So really the government has to get involved. There's always going to be demand, but you have to cut off the supply somehow, so that locals can also afford to live in their cities. And I would also say that I have rented Airbnbs in Spain, and they were run by locals, not foreigners, because a lot of people say, the foreigners are buying Airbnbs and renting those out. But a lot of locals also, because they also need a form of income that's adequate. And so they are renting out places to foreigners who will pay those high prices.
Sure. I mean, the biggest problem it's what you're saying at the end. It's like big corporations, banks, loopholes of people like having thousands of flats in the big cities where they know that tourists will always pay a price for going there, on renting them, taking that, not reducing the amount of licenses that you have for tourist flats, for example, in Madrid or Barcelona or in Malaga. It's happening. It's even gentrifying like the smaller cities of Spain, which is crazy. That's one of the problems. Of course, the other part, it's not like keep increasing the cost of life in a country where the salaries has not been touched for the last how many years?
20 years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, besides that, like maybe going back a little bit and not criticizing the society only. How different is life in Spain? Or like, I mean, right now you could compare it, I suppose, to Malaga, Madrid, Cordoba, the cities where you live, versus Houston and Texas in general. Like you mentioned, for example, the car culture, that it's very American, like doing a lot of things with the car, for example. What are the biggest differences that you feel between the two countries?
Yeah, I think, one is lifestyle. So I think, and that's no secret that people work a lot in the US. Not that they don't work a lot in other places, but in the US, I think work is kind of your identity. And I don't feel that in the same way here. In the US, I feel like people just live to work, and they don't really have much of a life outside of that. And in Spain, you really see people making other aspects of their life a real priority, whether that's family, friends, people meet up, spontaneously, casually after work. And so I really love that aspect of life where there's this very big joy of life and living and prioritizing enjoying your life. So that's a big one. We talked about the cars or lack of needing cars here in a lot of cities in Spain. Not all of them. In Malaga, it's nice to have a car to be able to drive to different places. But for the most part, you can get by on public transportation, which is I love that way of living. One, because it's healthier, but two, I just love being in contact with people on a daily basis, which is something you really lose when you live in that car culture. You just are in your home, your car, a building, and then car, home. You don't have that organic contact with people.
Yeah, makes sense.
A big one I'll add one more. A big one for me is safety. I don't think I have to explain that too much, but I just feel so much safer here in Spain in general, but also as a woman. And when I go back to the US for visits, definitely I feel a bit more on edge there because of the gun culture that we have there and the challenges that we have. I think those are some of the biggest differences between the two.
Nice. What would you say, like, it's the most funny or crazy story you remember from when you moved to Spain, besides meeting a guy from Malaga living in the United States?
Right? That was going to be my story. That's so crazy.
Don't tell me that he was living in Texas, because that's like way too much then.
No, that's too much. No, he was not. I'm trying to think. I feel like that was the craziest story I've had. I will say, we've talked about this, but I will say just getting the work visa sponsorship. For anyone who has tried to get a work visa in Europe, you know how hard that is. So when it finally happened for me, I was shocked in the interview. Often, I went on many interviews in Madrid trying to find work with local companies. And always it would get to the point in the interview where they would ask, do you have legal papers to work here? Do you need a sponsorship? And I would say, yes, I would need a sponsorship. And that's when they would say, oh, we're sorry, we can't help you. We can't move forward. And then it was the one interview where I said that, and they said, okay, yeah, we'll sponsor you. And it was like shocked. And everything was in Spanish. So in my mind, I was thinking, did I just not understand something correctly? Maybe I misunderstood them. But it was true. So it almost felt like winning the lottery when that actually happened.
Yeah, I feel like with the sponsorship of visas, and I see it here in Greece, but also in Germany where I lived before, and even in Spain, like I think it's very limited to either rather big companies, international companies who are bringing people from other countries also, and then they are sponsoring them, but already with flying them from somewhere else and then doing the sponsor stuff, or it really falls down to the startups and IT sector who are sponsoring visas. The rest of the companies are just they say, okay, this is too much work. I'm not going to do that. So it's sad. I mean, I suppose it's also a complication on top of the fact of and the stress of already being there in your case, and then needing something to stay, and then seeing the time pass, and the stress, I suppose it went up and up. Was Spanish a barrier in that time, or you were already fluent speaker? I mean, if you were doing interviews in Spanish.
Right. Yeah. I had a good level. I was doing interviews in Spanish, but I wasn't fluent. I was maybe B2, I would say. So I could get by enough, but a lot of the jobs, luckily, I was applying for were more for English was more what they needed you to use in the role. But of course, the staff, everyone spoke Spanish. So English worked to my benefit, especially for this particular role. That was a big plus for being a native English speaker.
Okay. Yeah, that also happens a lot of times. It's a demand, as I said, in Spain to have people who speak proper English. It's also really nice to have in companies, I suppose. So,
yeah, it is.
Did at the end you quit this company and when did you start with your own project? Did it influence the fact of staying in Spain also because you have your own stuff going on, or what happened there?
Yeah, good question. I have to think real quick back to that time. So I think I had started, I don't think I had started Sheet Hit Refresh yet. So It did not influence that. No, at all. Yeah, that was something that I did later, but the skills that I had acquired in that job and around that time were skills that I did use to help me launch my business. So that did play a part there.
Nice. So just before we close this first part, if it's okay for you, I always do like a little bit of like this or that questions. Like if you are supposed to choose one or the other, yes or yes. Madrid or Malaga?
Madrid.
Spanish or American food?
Oh my gosh. People are going to kill me, but American food. And I don't mean hamburgers and hot dogs. I just mean like diverse food from all around the world.
The proper Tex-Mex. Also, so the weather, Andalusian or Texas weather?
Oh, it's kind of the same. So
Really?
I guess I like Andalusia better because, yeah, I have the sea. Yeah. It's just
really?
as hot in both places. Yeah.
Okay. What about the times for doing things? I interviewed some other US people and they are always like, okay, Greeks or Italians or Spanish, and suddenly like their friends are telling them like, let's meet at 10 p.m. and it's always a surprising or shocking thing for Americans. I think, like, are you still
Right?
like, do you still prefer the American time style or the Spanish? Andalusia, it's also like everything goes late. I think it's postponed some hours.
Right? I love Spanish time. Give it to me. I like everything later. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And with a good siesta in between, I suppose.
That's the best.
Making international or local friends?
That's a tough one. I feel like they both have value and they're both incredible. Ooh. Can I say both?
Let's skip that one. Okay, let's say both. Then let's do the last one. Moving before or after 30 years old?
Ooh, you know that. They answer that. After 30. Do it after 30. You're wiser. You have more money. You make better decisions. You can enjoy it more after 30.
Nice. Let's use that as a bridge directly then to go to the second part of the episode, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, that works. Wonderful.
The Expert, helping women over 30 to move abroad.
Cool. So welcome back. And as I already mentioned in the introduction, your whole project is turning around helping women to move abroad when they are over 30 years old. And you do that through multiple channels, content, social media. Like, I suppose the part of like studying marketing influenced a little bit into that. But how that whole idea came from, how you decided to, I suppose it's your own experience translated and magnified a little bit, or how the whole project built from where?
Yeah, no, that's very true. It did come from my own experience. I mean, it was a lot of people in my network, friends and acquaintances had asked me after I moved abroad, how I did it. There was a lot of questions based on fear, like, weren't you too old? What about your career? Don't you want to get married? All these questions that was like, what? Okay. And also, once I moved abroad to Madrid, I had met so many incredible women that were around my age that had done this too, not just from the US, but from all over the world. And I just thought, let me start a Facebook group, because Facebook groups were very popular at the time. Let me start a Facebook group, put both of these people in there, the people who are asking questions, the people who have done it, and we can just, talk to each other and help each other. So it definitely was not a business idea. It was just like, let me try to help people through my own experience. But that Facebook group, while it started out with just me inviting friends and people I knew, within 1 year, we had grown to 4,000 members all around the world. just through word of mouth. And so that's when I kind of had an aha moment of like, oh, okay, maybe there's something here, right?
Well, okay. That's quite a lot of people.
So
especially from back in the day. Like I think right now with Instagram and everyone being in social media, like things are a little bit more speed up, and just like you grow in followers and stuff relatively easy if you do a product that is attractive. But back in the day, Facebook groups, like in Greece, they're still using Facebook a lot. I don't know.
Yes. Right? Here too. Greeks.
Yeah. And I think in Spain or in Germany, for example, it's got very reduced to that, to the groups, to the events, and nothing much else. So that's still quite alive. Like, where are you present? What was your strategy back in the day? Because you start with a Facebook group, you realize it has a hack, no? That people were triggered by the idea or wanted to know more. How did it grow to what it's now?
Yeah. So once we grew, I mean, even before we grew, I knew I wanted to start a blog. I think we started the blog the same year, 2017. So we started the Facebook group in November 2017. I think maybe I created a blog a few months later. Again, it was not a business idea. It was just like, let's share information and we can reach more people. But it was maybe after that first year when I had that aha moment, like, okay, this could be something. Just listening to what my members needed. Somebody early on after that first year asked, have you ever thought about doing a retreat? One of our members asked us, and I was like, a retreat? Oh no. And luckily I had some friends who I had gone on one of their retreats. They do running trips around the world. And they reached out to me and let me know, said, hey, if you ever need to do a retreat, we can help you. And they did, at the time, we're doing trips to Morocco. And so I thought, oh, that's great. Morocco's close to Spain. People want to go to Morocco. Sometimes women are afraid to go by themselves. Let's put this idea out there. Let's see if people want to go on a retreat with us. People who have never bought anything from us, who don't really know us. Let's see what they say. And we put the idea out there and it sold out. And so that was kind of the second validation that we had, like, oh, people, okay, they don't know us, they've never bought anything, and now they're giving us $2,500 to go to Morocco. So there's something here that they need, right? There's a need that's not being met that we can help with. And so it kind of grew from there to where we had the retreat. Then we started doing meetups. Then what else did we do? Then during the pandemic, I wrote a book. I wrote a visa guide to living in Europe. So, what are the easiest ways to move to Europe? What are the visas? Because that was the question I kept getting. People wanted to move here, but didn't know how to figure out or solve that problem of the visa. So I did that, and that was a hit. That book actually is what got us in Forbes. We had our Forbes feature. So it just kind of snowballed from there, and just continually to listen to what the audience wanted. We did a podcast because they were asking for it. And just kind of following their lead and refining things until where we are right now, which is now, we don't do the retreats anymore. We don't do a lot of in-person, but we do a lot of virtual now. We have an online masterclass, which I'm launching in June. So that's right around the corner. And that's a 4-day online training to learn how to move abroad and understand where to start. And then we have a premium community from our Facebook group. So the Facebook group, we have, I think over 14,000 members there now. And so we've started a premium community that's much smaller, where we help guide you through every step of the move abroad process. So that's the Refreshers Lounge. So we started off, just a Facebook group, and we have expanded over the last 7 years to help our members out.
So it was more like a strategy of like saying you had your content, some of your content for free in social media, YouTube, etc., where you offer some content in there, and then you have like a VIP lounge, let's say like this, like a more personalized approach and paid premium version. I don't know if calling it like this or
I think that's right. I mean, for so long we did a lot of things. We just, gave information and content for free, right? Because I always had a full-time job. Like She Hit Refresh again was just a side. Well, first it was just a hobby, then it became a side project. But as we started building momentum, we did the free stuff for a very long time. Even though we had the retreats, it was still giving out a lot of information for free. But we just, realized maybe a year or two ago, very recently, that we could do so much more if we had some premium products, right? And so that's where that idea came into place. Again, listening to what people needed. They needed more than just going into a Facebook group and asking a question. They needed more direct information. They wanted to talk to experts. They wanted more in-depth resources, not just what the blog covered. And so we created kind of containers for them to access that information.
You always talk in plural in this. That means that there is, I know that you had like a partner, at least in the podcast. That's what I check. I've seen it's more like a collective project, or was kickstarted by yourself alone and then someone get into it, and how many people it's involved?
Yeah, I love I like that you mentioned that, because I didn't even remember. I didn't realize I'm saying we. So actually, the idea of the Facebook group started with me and a friend. I had the idea. I was like, let's start a Facebook group. And she said, okay, yeah, let's do it. And so, she helped me lift that off the ground. And then we started the blog together. But she's been located in Texas. So she's like my best friend, Annette. She helped me in the beginning. She came and, was at our first retreat and helped us. But, she has a full-time job. She's very busy. And so Annette has been, more of my sounding board over the years as I kind of ran with She Hit Refresh, because everything was moving so fast and I was moving so fast with it, that I've kind of been, one woman show, I would say, for the past five-ish years. Yeah. But, still turn to Annette for advice, and especially so since she's still in the US and wants to move abroad. She's also such a great resource, because she really is my target market there. Right.
Makes sense.
But although I talk in we, a lot of the things that you see, it's just me, one woman show with some of my freelancers that help me out with stuff.
Nice. What was it the current target and the idea behind this? Always your main idea when you created the first group was already focused on women over 30 years old, or it why this focus? Like, I understand the focus on women, and I understand it where it comes from, and the market target, it's there for sure. But why did you choose to specify, like to go to the very specific target users?
I think just because that's who I was, right? That's what I did. I moved at 35. And as I mentioned in the beginning, my network was asking me how I did it. And they were also, around my age bracket. And when I moved, there was not a lot of information for someone like me. There was a lot of information for doing a gap year, if you're in college or right after college. So somebody who is very young and doesn't have a lot of responsibilities and really can just pick up and go very easily and doesn't have to think about things like a mortgage or your career yet, right? And many other things. Or there was a lot of information for solo female travel of a certain age, but I wasn't traveling, I was trying to move. Or there was information for someone who was going to retire, which I wasn't in that bracket either. So
I see.
So I just realized too, when people were asking me for information of how do you do this when you have certain responsibilities that you have accrued over your life, right? If you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, when you have a career, how do you start over in a new country? Nobody was addressing that. And so that's another reason why I really honed in on this niche, is that those are the people who are coming to me. So those are the people that I want to try to help solve these problems.
Nice. I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you find a nice niche, that's incredible. Like, and sometimes that comes with making the target user smaller, no, and not trying to tackle all the problems for everyone, but what related with that, actually, because I saw a lot of content, and you don't limit yourself to talk about Spain or moving to Spain. You talk about other countries also, majority of them European countries as far as I saw. How do you do that? Like, because at the end, a visa process from Spain, it's absolutely different from Italy or from France. And how do you gather all this information? How do you have people helping you in each country, or what's going on?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I would say, yeah, we mainly focus on Europe, although we do have, women in our community who are interested in going to Latin America or Asia. But I would say Europe is the main focus because that's what I know best and that's where my network is. And I tap into that network. So yeah, definitely I don't know about every detail of every visa, right? That's impossible for one person to know. But I would say at the end of the day, the visa process is pretty straightforward, or pretty similar, in each country. There are certain requirements that you have to meet. There's certain documents you have to get. There's a process you have to go through. And at the end of the day, that's very similar across the board, right? A work visa in Spain is very similar to a work visa in Poland, right? But to get down into those nitty-gritty details, I do rely on other people to fact check. I mean, I do a lot of research myself. When I wrote my visa guide to Europe, there's over 50 visas included in there. We cover 18 different countries. I did a lot of research on that, but then I have people in my network that are experts. For instance, there's an expert in Croatia who, helped me ensure that the information for Croatia was intact. And the same with our blog posts. A lot of those are outsourced to people who have expertise in that country or have gone through that process. So I definitely rely on other people to help me make sure that we're giving out accurate information.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I suppose with visa and bureaucracy, at the end you can find information and you can talk with people. But when people ask for a more generic question and I don't know, I'm planning to move to Italy. Where should I go as a woman, or where is the best job situation right now? If you never lived in Italy, or you are not someone who moved there, that information is complicated to answer that. You need someone who knows, I suppose.
Definitely. And that's where the power of community comes in, in our Facebook group, for example. I mean, as anyone who's you've been in a Facebook group, especially for foreigners or expats, you can ask a question and you'll definitely have people who have been in that situation, that will comment and let you know, hey, I use this lawyer, hey, I've lived here, I worked here. And I would say, for our VIP, kind of experience in our premium community, the Refreshers Lounge, we have experts come in where you can, talk to them live and ask questions. And so I definitely, again, use my network to come help answer those questions for my community, because again, like you said, I can't know it all. I've never lived in France, so how can I know everything about France, right? But I do know people who live there and are experts, and I can connect them to my community.
Cool. I was just asking about the job, because I suppose a lot of the people who is willing to move abroad, but they don't have a job, and that makes them fear even more the fact of moving abroad, because without having a financial sustain that can maintain you into a country you don't really like, or sometimes you do the jump. But I suppose a lot of people, especially after 30, as you said, I suppose this fear increase. How do you deal with that? I saw that you have some recommendations of remote job and finding and whatever, but do you really offer or you help people to search for new jobs?
Yeah, this is such a great question. Well, first I would say for my audience, I do not recommend moving without a job unless if you can financially afford to do so, right? Some people are retiring early, or some people have savings to do a year-long sabbatical. That's great. But if you want to move abroad, and you want it to be a successful move, you need to have your job situation figured out before you go. Also, because a lot of visas are linked to work. So you probably, as a US citizen, probably can't even move to a foreign country if you don't have a digital nomad visa, or if you're able to get a job in country. So what we do is we support people with providing resources. In our Refreshers Lounge or VIP experience, we have a job board where I go and look for jobs that are remote, that meet our members, like the jobs that our members are looking for. We have remote work experts come talk to us. We have recruiters come talk to us. And so just trying to get our members in front of the right people who can help them, fix that problem faster. So I don't per se, I'm not a recruiter or headhunter. I don't, personally help people find a job in that sense, but definitely, give them job links to work from anywhere jobs, help them understand what countries you can move to in Europe easier in terms of finding a job in that country, right? Not every country in Europe is easy to find work in, but some are a bit easier. So helping them understand the challenges and the opportunities for both of those. I mean, there's two ways you can do it. Again, you can find remote work that you can take with you, or you can find a job in country.
I see. I also saw you already said that majority of the focus that you have right now, it's in European countries, although you have some people who are interested in moving in other places.
Yeah, well, our community is global. So we have people from all over the world, but I would say the biggest demographics are going to be from the United States, from Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. Those are our biggest demographics. But we have, members who are located in Latin America, in Africa, in East Asia. So we have members from all over the world, but the biggest ones are going to be those that are coming from the regions I just mentioned, or the countries I just mentioned.
Nice. What is the place that you would recommend right now? Like, is there any place that you recommend on top of other places?
Well, there's one I'm recommending, but I haven't been there yet. So maybe wait till I get more information. But I've heard great things, and I'm going in September, about Albania. And I'll tell you why I recommend Albania. So Albania is one of the only countries in Europe that does not require a visa for Americans to move there for the first year. So if you are in the US and you want to leave the country tonight and don't want to have to figure out your visa situation, you can just hop on a plane and go to Albania and live there very comfortably, because it's a very affordable country to live in right now. So that's what I'm recommending to people who don't want to deal with all the bureaucracy.
It's a funny one, like all the Albanians coming to Greece and all the Americans going to Albania. Well, with that, what is the core? So what would you say that it's the core value of the products that, or the project that you have in your hands? Like, what is the most relevant points? Because you're touching multiple things, but if you need to summarize it somehow, how you do it, how you explain your project to others?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're here to teach women over 30 how to move abroad, and how we do that is, one, educating you, so letting you know exactly the steps that you need to take, connecting you to the right people, right, the right resources, and also connecting you with a community so you don't feel alone. I think a lot of women who are, over 30 doubt that this is a good idea, that maybe it's a mistake, maybe they're too old, maybe it's too late, maybe they're the only one who has this crazy idea that they want to move abroad. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, in She Here Refreshed, I think that's the first thing that you get to experience, is not being alone, and that there's thousands of women out there who want to do the same thing and have done so. And we are here to support you and teach you how to do it in a way that you can make a successful move. Because yes, you can string this together and do it yourself. But remember, like I said, I tried and failed many times to do this. So we want to teach you how to do it in a way that's going to work.
Nice. You kind of succeed pretty much with this project. Like, you have a big amount of followers, you have like a premium thing. I suppose like a lot of it has been hard work, but also like having the knowledge in marketing. I don't think everyone can throw out a product out there and succeed with it. Unfortunately, the podcast, I hope it has the bandwidth that your project had, for example, and arrive to mass more people. Of course, I always have an extra job and a full-time job, and it's not always easy. It's more like a side project. But how did you arrive? Like, what do you think when it triggered the fact that you succeed? And I mean, you mentioned, for example, that Forbes was through your, like, the mention or the sponsoring purpose was like coming with your book. There is also like a mention in New York Times, so you were like also there. How all of this happened?
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind words. I think, a lot of it with any project, and you'll hear people say this, like, you have to love what you're doing because it does require so much work. So that's one thing is, I did this for many years without, making very much money. I mean, less than, a few $1,000s. I did a lot of work just for the pure love of the project. And the belief that, we were going to be able to attain certain goals in time. And just creating that content and quality content, that's what really helped us get those features, right? When I reached out to Forbes and pitched them, I had things to back it up. I had things to show them. New York Times, they found us, they were Googling love abroad, women abroad, and, our content came up, and that's how they found us. So I think just having, understanding that your brand is your reputation, having quality content and being consistent, putting it out there, and not always thinking that everything's transactional. I knew that, the blog isn't making us money per se, but it does have a reach and it gives us exposure, right? So that has helped a lot. But I think at a certain point, you have to understand that, yes, I have a marketing background, but I don't know a lot about building a business because I've never done that before. And so it's really important to invest in experiences, people, programs that are going to elevate you to the next level, right? And I did that, maybe it was last year. I invested in a program that helped me build my masterclass that I've mentioned, my 4-day training. That's something that I went through a program to learn how to build this. And so, I've invested in business coaches. I've invested in going to certain conferences to meet the right people. So I think it's not just luck or hard work. It's also being strategic and understanding that nobody is really successful by themselves. It really takes, I want to say a village, not a village, but it does take that investment in others to help elevate you, right, to the next level. So I think that's really important. I definitely wanted to point that out, that other people help me get to,
I suppose,
right?
No?
Yes.
Having a plan and having the network and the context to arrive there, I suppose that's key in every success from anyone, like major.
Yeah, network and anything in life helps you. So definitely putting yourself in places where you can meet the right people can help open doors.
Well, from my side, like, very congratulations. Even like, I'm a designer, so from a perspective of like visuals and everything, I think you achieved like a very nice. If you do it on your own, like, wow, okay, that's like, congratulations on like not doing word art, because you would freak out how many people like it's building things that for us designers is like, oh, wow. So in that sense, congrats. Are you...
Thank you so much. Hey, that means a lot. Coming from a designer, that means a lot. We also had help with our branding, so it pays to pay people to help you, right?
Yeah. We don't only paint things. We actually, designers, we do things like sometimes, from time to time, we work hard. What you are like focusing right now, like currently it's the project that you are working on, or you are like having also other side projects that you're working on? Like...
Yeah, no, I would say, it was 2 years ago that I gave up working for other people. So I was working, as a freelancer full time. I stopped doing that just to focus on my project, on She Hit Refresh. From time to time, I will consult other people who are building online communities. I do help for that very infrequently, but I would say 90%, 95% of my time is on She Hit Refresh. It keeps me busy, and we're just trying to grow and reach some new goals this year. So excited about that.
Sounds good. So before we close the episode, actually, is there anything that I haven't touched? Anything that you want to talk about? Any tips, general tips? I don't know, anything. I mean, at the end, of course, check Cepee's Instagram, like the whole project, like under she hit refresh. Like if you search it, it appears in all social media, in YouTube, in their website, everything. Like I think it's pretty easy to find you around, but please use the platform to spread the word if there is anything that I missed or that you want to promote. Anything?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just say two things. I think one, just to remind anybody out there who's listening who wants to move abroad, but just feels a bit discouraged or like nobody gets them or it's a crazy idea, really find a community that you can talk to. I think this is with anything in life. If you're talking to the wrong people, they're going to make you feel like this is a crazy idea because they don't get it. It's not their dream. They haven't done this. You really have to turn to people who get you or who have done this. And that's where you're going to find empowerment, validation, and you won't give up on the dream because you can see that it is possible. And it is very much possible. If you're a woman over 30, of course, turn to our community. We have She Hit Refresh. As Mark said, you can find us on Instagram, you can come to our website, you can join our Facebook group there. And as I mentioned, we have a training coming up, our masterclass, our Move Abroad After 30 masterclass. That starts on June 8th. So would love to have you there. It's 4 days. It's fun, informative, and I'm going to break down how to move abroad in 4 steps. So definitely going to simplify it for anyone who's feeling overwhelmed and doesn't know where to start. And I think that is it. I just want to thank you, Mark, for giving me the opportunity to be here and share my story. It's been a wonderful experience on your podcast.
No, thank you for accepting the invitation and coming to talk about your project, but also about your personal life. It's not always easy to expose yourself a little bit outside the world, let's say like this, but I really much appreciate this. As always, everyone who is listening, and as the episode will be released the week of the masterclass, if you're listening that in premise, just like check out the masterclass and maybe register for it.
Thank you.
Again, thousands of thanks for your experience and for explaining us your project and I mean for the job that you do with helping people move abroad. I think that I can relate to it, even though I'm not a woman and I'm barely over 30. Let's say like that. But of course, I know how difficult it can be. So I think you're doing a great job, and I hope that it helps other people and it reaches to everyone. Again, thank you a lot, and hope everyone enjoyed this episode.
Thank you.
This is Expat Experts. Support this podcast by listening us in Podimo and subscribe in Spotify and YouTube.